how are you keeping? I'm Marty from Anna's Anchor and welcome to week 4 of DIY IRL, the 32-week project where every week I'm interviewing a different guest from a different county in Ireland that is in some way, shape or form taking a DIY approach to their chosen vocation. As you know, I'm also writing and recording a new song every week, and someone mentioned to me during the week about asking to explain a little more about the songs in each episode. So I don't know if that's something that you would like to hear a bit more of. Maybe let me know over Twitter or whatever shite social media you like to use. Once again, thanks a million to everyone for sharing links to the previous episode and saying nice things online about the podcast. It's really refreshing to hear and means a lot, so thank you so much. If you do enjoy it, and if you could write a review on Apple Podcast, that would be fantastic. Or if you could just message one friend that you think might enjoy this, that's all it takes to help build something like this, so that would be great if you had the time. This week's song is called Blood Thinners. It's the first song where I had literally nothing written or prepared from so far in this project. So I had to sit down, write, record and mix the whole thing in the one sitting, which was fairly intense, but got there in the end anyway. 2 of my most listened to artists on Spotify are Tycho and the XX, even though I think Anna's Anchor sounds absolutely nothing like that, and I've never written anything in that vein whatsoever. So I tried to dabble in that world a tiny bit this week with Blood Thinners. One interesting too, I suppose, on the recording is I tracked the guitar through this thing called a Watkins Copycat, which is a 70s real tape delay that was gifted to me by Patrick O'Brien of Windings via a dead band's garage. So that thing is super cool, and hopefully I can use a little bit more of it in the future. So moving on to this week's guest, it is Aisling McCallion of Co.Donegal. Ash is a knitwear designer and textiles artist from Muff, County Donegal. Ash has worked previously with Inishman Knitting Company and is currently starting her very own business here in Limerick, so she's right in the middle of that. This is our first guest that isn't music related, and I definitely don't want this to seem like it's an Irish music industry podcast, since the first 3 guests so far have all come from a music background, because, well, for starters, there's already a really good podcast by a guy called Mark Graham called the Irish Music Industry Podcast, and secondly, that's not really something that interests me too much. So that's why I'm really excited to have Ash on, because she totally represents what I'm trying to tap into with this podcast, and I'm really grateful for giving us our time. I first met Ash through Cruiser and all the DIY gigs here in Limerick while she was studying in the Art College in Limerick, and at one point she organised an event in Sheila Fab during Fashion Revolution Week that really opened my mind to a lot of things in relation to sustainable fashion that I'd never thought about before whatsoever. So I'm thrilled to have the conversation with her, and I really hope you enjoy it. All right, Aisling McCallion.
Hello.
Ash, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Grand. I'm pretty good.
Or what about you, should I say?
This is the part of every episode that I hate the most, is asking someone how they are when we've already been chatting for ages beforehand.
Yeah.
But you are good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Very good.
Wasn't lying to you earlier or anything.
Nice one.
Yeah.
So Ash, you're from County Donegal.
Yeah.
Whereabouts exactly? Is it Muff that you're from?
It is Muff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do the jokes ever get annoying?
Never.
Really?
No, never. I feel like it's just, you just expect them. You know, they just keep coming. So you get all the same ones. It's always funny.
You do actually have a diving club in Muff as well, don't you?
Unfortunately, that is definitely false.
It's false?
Yeah.
Really?
That is a Wikipedia page. Just gonna squash all those rumours. That is not real.
Interesting, because I went to college with someone who was from around there and said that there was.
Oh, he's definitely lying. Or she.
Fucking lying.
Yeah. We have a Muff Health Centre.
Okay.
A Muff Play Park. A Muff Soccer Pitch. I don't know.
Just no Muff Diving Club?
No.
Because I was thinking that would be a serious source of revenue if you had a genuine diving club.
It would be very good.
T-shirts online.
Yeah.
Someone should probably do that anyway.
There's Muff Festival in July, so you know.
Okay, so you're still cashing in on it a little bit.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's pretty good. The first time I was in Donegal, which was only like probably 2 years ago. Never realised just how close to the border
Yeah.
it was, especially like from coming from Derry over.
Yeah.
Which was crazy. So what was it like growing up so close to Northern Ireland?
I think I didn't notice it until I actually moved to college, because it was like so normal.
Yeah.
Like Muff is like right on the border.
Mm-hmm.
So like to me, Derry is my closest city.
Yeah.
And I would have grown up in Derry. I had a lot of friends in Derry. I did karate in Derry. And it was always just like you kind of knew on certain days you wouldn't go there. Like there's certain places you couldn't go there. Or Dad used to work in Belfast and he'd like leave his car in Muff and then have to get in a different car to go to get Belfast, and they get like different names on the building sites and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah. But it was only like coming to college and actually like you'd say something and people would be like, wait, what? And then I was like, oh wait, that's not normal for everyone. Or like also that people don't know a lot about the border or the north.
It's totally true. It's kind of gnarly. Like my parents have, I think my dad's been up north once.
Yeah.
Because I suppose all they've seen is just all the bad stuff from TV.
Definitely.
So like people down here, I say particularly from the generation before ours, definitely have a certain perception from up there and kind of go out of their way to avoid it, which is really sad because I personally find it to be the nicest.
Yeah.
And the best part of the country, really.
I must say the banter and everything when you go home, I think it's like maybe people's way of dealing with it in some ways, but like I don't think there's any crack like there is in Northern Ireland. Like there's always this like if you can survive a night out in Derry, you can do anything, like just based on how much you can have the crack, not anything like scary or anything like that. Like regularly remember being out in Derry and like even a chat up line would be like, all right, you Catholic or Protestant? And like if you take it seriously, they'd be like, oh, this one. But more like you have to like keep with the jokes, like
yeah. It's a very Irish kind of sense of humour to make fun of something so serious.
Definitely.
I remember when I was going to buy my first car.
Yeah.
I was just running it by my dad and I was like, look at this. I think it was a Ford Focus. I was like, look, there's this really good Ford Focus up in Donegal. He was like, Donegal, no. I wouldn't recommend buying a car up there. There's all mad bastards. They drive the shite out of the cars.
Oh yeah, stock car tracks are like everywhere. Like I first drove in my granddad's field when I was probably like 10 in his Jeep and stuff like that. But it was like he has a farm and stuff, so that was kind of safe. But yeah, the car culture is definitely something weird. But
dodge a bullet for sure. So
yeah, definitely.
That's really
for sure.
Do you notice? Is there much of a difference in mindset from, let's say, the generation before you, in relation to the border and I suppose relationships between Catholics and Protestants versus your own age group that you would have grown up with?
I think everyone probably has their own experience of it, probably depending on their family or where exactly they're from or like previous history that their family went through. But like I do think a lot of people our age are very much like, we don't want that to happen again, because we've all heard the stories and like people dealing with, even like a lot of people don't talk about what happened. So like that's probably why it feels like it can be repeating itself a bit, like in Derry recently, with the shooting and stuff, because it is very much like that mental health thing as well. I was like, oh, this happened, but we're not going to talk about it, but we'll move on. But it's like, how can you move on and not do it again if you're not going to talk about it? But there's definitely like, even in school we did cross-border programs, and it was very much like at the time there was a lot of community activism trying to get like children and kids to do different stuff and hang out together. So like for me growing up, it would have been normal to have friends from Derry who are Catholic or Protestant, but a lot of people as well, I think for us now at my age, it's very much like we're not religious. Totally, like everyone's like, this isn't, I don't see the point of this. And I think for a lot of Ireland as well, that's for different reasons as well, but it's definitely something that I think will die out hopefully in the future, but we need to talk about it and talk about how we can grow past it rather than ignore it.
Yeah, and I suppose it is very much in the hands of the younger generation, even though kind of weren't necessarily a part of it. Going back then, you obviously work with fashion, you went to university. doing textiles. So
Yeah.
how did you first get into fashion? Like, when did that start permeate into?
Probably it'll actually starts with dairy really as well, because of where I was located. A lot of women in Inishowen and Derry were employed in factories, and it was like they were like really independent, and like it was like seen as like you could go and get a job in a factory and be your own woman. So like there's a very big strong thing of that in Derry and around where I'm from too. It's very much like, oh, this is like a good skill for you to have. So my granny used to work for shirt factories in Derry, and she used to make wedding dresses, and she knit it, and she did everything. Like my mum used to work in Fruit of the Loom, and her sisters used to work in Fruit of the Loom. So I just kind of grew up with it. It was very much like if you needed something or you wanted clothes, it would be like, oh, could we make it? Or if you were going shopping, mum would be like looking at the label and being like, what's in that now? And like, do you have anything you're going to wear with that? It was just very much like part of my growing up. My granny taught me how to knit. My other granny taught me how to sew. And it's just like overlocker, sewing machines, knitting needles. It was just all around me all the time.
And you just naturally kind of grew into using all of that equipment and knitting yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Like going to college, or even in secondary school as well, I would have been doing like little projects myself and making little bags, or like fixing shirts, or do you know, you get your school trousers too and they're like way too long.
Yeah.
So you're like, mum would make us like hem up our own trousers and stuff, and then the next year you'd be taking them down, and it's like, it just like came really naturally. And then came to Limerick, and then I was like really confused, because I was like, oh, art college definitely. And then I got into it and I was like, oh wait, I actually hate the whole world that surrounds fashion and like the attitude in it, and it like totally put me off picking it as a discipline in Limerick, because you do core year and you get to try everything out. And I was like, I love all of those skills and the idea of making, but like the world that exists in isn't for me. So then I did printmaking for a year, and then I was going to transfer to NCED, shockingly, to do textiles, because Limerick didn't have textiles.
Okay. So the first year in the art college in Limerick is just a general
core year.
Okay. Why did you decide to move to Limerick in the first place?
We had a teacher in transition year, an art teacher substitute, and she had gone to Limerick, and she was also like the first teacher in secondary school for me and my friend Stephen, who was actually like, oh yeah, art college is like really good, you can learn a lot, whereas every other career thing was like, oh, but yours are like good students, would you not go and do teaching? And it was like, she was like the only kind of support that we had, and she did junkature with us, and we ended up like winning, and our dress was like on the red carpet in London at like a Martin Scorsese premiere.
Whoa.
And stuff like that. Yeah.
Did you get to go to London?
No. Classic fashion.
Bastards.
Yeah. We got to see a picture of it in the paper. But at the start, junkature was like really small, but now I think the winners of that prize actually do get to go to London, which is good. But you know, we didn't get to, but whatever.
Okay.
But Amy totally kind of influenced my idea of coming to Limerick.
Yeah. So they did get textiles in Limerick in the end?
After first year. It was kind of like when I was in first year, they were always like talking about it, but it was like going to be a new course, so you didn't know what it was going to be like, or who was teaching it or whatever. It was a bit risky. And one of my favourite tutors to this day was like Des McMahon. I think he's from Limerick, but he's went to Chelsea School of Art, and he would have taught me in print. And I remember I was like so between fashion and print, and he was just like, you need textiles, like you need something. It was like him, it was kind of like, go to NCD and do this because it's a good course. But he was also just like, you don't want to do fashion though, like you don't want to be drawing pointless croquis all day when you can be making something that like means something. And that always like kind of stuck with me too. And then he was telling me about the textiles course while I was kind of like not in Limerick, and then they got it in, and it was like tutors that I liked doing it, and it was kind of much like we had to fight for everything in that course. Like we had to fight for just a studio space, we had to fight for equipment, but it was very much like us and the tutors against the world for like 3 years.
Okay.
So it was like we learned a lot, and we also did really good projects, and I got a lot of experience from the course, definitely.
Is the course different now to how it was when you were doing it?
Yeah, it's definitely probably a sore point.
Okay.
Because it was fashion, knitwear and textiles when I started it, and we were like the first graduates. There was 14 of us, and 7 of us got jobs in the knitwear industry straight out of college, which I don't know if they really cared about or that wasn't what they were looking at. But the course was funded by, actually I don't know if I can, anyway, the course was funded by someone who had a lot of influence, and it kind of, they decided to change it while there was people in the course from knitwear to costume design, but didn't change what they were getting taught. So it was like costume design and knitwear doesn't make any sense. You don't have the skills like for like pattern drafting or the history that goes into making a piece for film. It's a totally different discipline and a totally different industry. And yeah, it's just, I'm really upset that they didn't kind of progress with what their main vision was, but because it was like really great. It was the first knitwear course in Ireland. They're the only college that has an industrial knit machine, which is why I got my job in the factory, because like programming for knitwear, not a lot of people have that skill, and the fact that we were taught it in college before we were in the industry was mad. And also like just the heritage of knitwear and making in Ireland, that was their focus, rather than like throwing you out into like London and being like, oh, this is what fashion is. It was like you can create your own world for fashion. So it was like really visionary. But
okay, that's the way things go sometimes. Well, I suppose you mentioned then your first job after the course then, which is with Inishman Knitting Company. Did you find it hard to find work initially after finishing a new course?
I think they contacted our course before we had finished looking for graduates, and that was like in March before we graduated, and 3 or 4 of us emailed them back and went out for an interview. So that was, I had the job before I finished college.
Oh, that's amazing.
Which was really lucky, and I know it's not like that for a lot of people, but like it just showed that there was a need for graduates like us as well.
That's amazing, because that always kind of is a little bit the elephant in the room when it comes to a lot of degrees that have a strong creative element. Is like, where is the work going to come at the end of it? So Inishman Knitting Company then, can you explain a bit about what they make? And obviously it's in Inishman, so that's a bit of a mad place to be living.
Yeah, it was a bit of a wild time. I didn't understand how big they were kind of before I went there, but because they don't sell much in Ireland, they're not big in Ireland, but they're also Ireland's only luxury knitwear or fashion brand. They're the only luxury brand, and they mostly do menswear. They have they have a women's wear line as well, but it's not as big because it's mostly jumpers, so it's kind of unisex anyway. But they source like really good, they have really conscious way of sourcing their yarn, and they have like alpaca that has all of the organic certificates from Peru, and they have organic cotton from Peru as well, and they get a masters of linen quality yarns from Italy, which means that you can source it from farm to field, kind of like your food. And it was like they were so responsible about everything that they did, and then they also like didn't refer to themselves as fashion, and like they're founded by a couple who are now, don't know if I should say their age, but I don't know if they would mind or not. But like they started the company 42 years ago, and I remember going in and I was just like, they're always like, we're not fashion. And like coming from the education that we come from and like looking at the fashion industry, to me I was like, yous are so punk. Like this is such a punk attitude. And
why don't they consider themselves fashion?
Because they're not like making for trends. They have a customer that they're making for, so it's also, they make to order, so they don't create any waste. They're like creating things that are already sold, which is like crazy thing to do in fashion, because you make for trends or you follow trends, and it's like that is like your main thing that inspires you. But for them it was about creating employment on the island at the very beginning and keeping the island going. And then they're very good at business. Like they even looked at it being like, if we want to pay people properly and we want fair wages for our factory workers, then we have to go luxury, because if we don't go luxury, people won't get the time they need to put into making something like that, and also the money that it takes to pay people to do that. So a small factory, it was only 20 people, and I was like running the machines there at the start. They have like 7 industrial knit machines, which also like when you come from a nerdy knitwear kind of student perspective, it was
Yeah.
like, oh my god, these are machines, and I get to learn how to like take them apart and put them back together, and like even just how they ran the studio was like, everything was just so fascinating in the beginning. And then after 6 months I became like the technical designer. So that was, I was doing programming. So I suppose for people who are talking about knitwear, it's like, it's not done on knitting needles anymore. It's like,
Yeah.
the tool is the machine. So
Yeah.
as much as you can manipulate a pair of knitting needles, it's like a skill to like manipulate a machine for programming. It's like digital craftsmanship.
And what software do you use for design for that kind of work?
It's kind of like Apple. So the machines are Shimashiki, and they make their own software and
Right.
hardware.
Okay.
And you can't buy the software to download on a computer. You have to buy their computer, and it's like 30 grand for the computer. And if you have to update the software, you have to buy a new computer. It's crazy if you're
Jesus.
trying to start your own company.
Okay. And are they like the industry standard for that?
Yeah, there's Shima and Stahl. Shimashiki are Japanese and Stahl are German. Shimashiki, they're both used worldwide, but I'd say Shimashiki are the most popular within the industry. Anyway, Stahl is definitely used a lot more in Germany. But they also have like separate languages, like for programming. I've never tried Stahl, but Shima is like based on colours, and colours have functions that represent stitches, and then you can make your own functions. And like in the factory, everything, so every front, back and sleeve would be a program. So if you're making a jumper and it had like 6 sizes, you'd have a program for the sleeve of every size, the back of every size, the front of every size.
Okay.
So there's a lot of work in
Wow.
it. Yeah.
I assume that was a very steep learning curve then.
Yeah, definitely.
That's crazy.
Because I did a bit of programming in college, but like even it wasn't fully fashioned. So that's where on the factory, to save waste, everything is made in the shape, so you don't cut it out after.
Okay.
So it's like you start with like 100 needles here, and you need to finish with 20 here in like a curve. So it's kind of like going back to math and like calculating all your curves and all your angles and stuff like that. But I love that. So yeah, it was definitely a steep learning curve, but one that I really enjoyed. I just like because I was also on an island with 120 people and nothing to do. So
Yeah.
I mean, what else are you going to do but figure it out?
Yeah. And so how did you find it living out there then? Was it isolating at times?
Yeah, definitely. Like winter is next level. Like you're just, we're lucky that we had a good group of people in the factory. Like there's interns that come from Belfast School of Art and Mönchengladbach in Germany, and I actually lived with Fiona Byrne, who I went to college with, and we got really close in the summer. But if we didn't have that in the winter, I don't know. Like a lot of islanders don't even live there in the winter, they leave. And the pub doesn't open. It's only the school and the factory. The shop was open, but like unless you've been to Inishmaan, I don't think people even imagine how barren it is. Like there's really nothing there apart from the factory, the school, the shop, which is probably like less than 100 meters by 100 meters, not even that big, but it is very well stocked. I must say, Tomas is the place. Great, so good. He gets exotic fruits in once a week.
Really? Wow.
Which would be like a watermelon or a grapefruit, but
Yeah.
you never know what you're going to get. So that was quite fun.
You didn't have like a long stint of bad weather where they couldn't stock the shop, or
Oh yeah, yeah.
that's kind of gnarly.
Yeah, it's wild. Like it's from kind of October on, you need to be filling up your own freezer.
Yeah, that's just that idea alone in this day and age seems so alien
Yeah,
to the way the rest of the world lives.
it's a serious lack of convenience. Like there's no
Yeah.
convenience.
When I was out in Inishturk, I do remember
Yeah.
that we were the first boat out after a long string of really bad weather, and it was just like filled with food, and all the locals were like, thank God
Yeah.
we're fucking living off scraps for
Yeah, I'd say so.
the last few days.
Yeah, everyone like gets together. Like you kind of have to know your neighbours and get on well with your neighbours and stuff like that. And even there's a guy on the island called Cullum, and he has one of the best vegetable patches. A lot of them grow their own veg, but like the islanders were great, and the more you got to know them, the more they would help you out. Like I remember passing Cullum one day in the road, and I was like, oh, your vegetable patch looks good, I'd love some beetroot. And then I came out of work the next day, and there was like a kilo of beetroot sitting on top of my cart. I was like, I don't even know how I'm going to use that much beetroot, but I'll try.
That was really nice though.
Yeah.
So you were kind of explaining there that the thought process out in Inishmaan was somewhat like fairly life cycle approach. I obviously studied environmental science in university, but I never even really considered clothes as something that should or shouldn't be sustainable. Like everything that we learned about in college was either energy based for the most part, like plastics and recyclables, or we did a certain amount on electronics and the life cycle analysis of electronic products.
Yeah.
But there was never any mention whatsoever about clothes and sustainability of clothes. Yeah, and it wasn't until I met yourself, particularly when you were doing the fashion revolution stuff, that it kind of really opened my mind. So I suppose if you wouldn't mind educating me, and I suppose when you talk about sustainable clothes, what does that actually mean?
I think even for clothing, the words like sustainable and ethical probably can be quite problematic in a way as well, because you can be sustainable in one sense and ethical in one sense and completely the opposite in another. Because for clothing, you have, it comes from like either man-made fibers or like natural fibers, so that's your wool, cotton, but even like how those are made and produced on farms with people, like, is that done ethically? Is that sort of sustainably? Are those people getting paid? And then man-made is like your acrylic yarns and stuff that has polyester in it and microfibers, which is then, if you're like not using the man-made fibers, it's like, are those really more ethical and sustainable because they're going back into the world, they can't biodegrade, there's no real solution for them once they're made and in the world. So that's like just your raw materials. And then like from then, if you're not doing knitwear, those raw materials go to a factory and they're made into fabrics, and it's like, where are those factories at? What are those workers' rights like? Like, are they getting paid? Are they being looked after? How much or also, are you overproducing there as well? Like, are you making too much fabric just to have it, like, just in case? And then after that, like, then that's like where the kind of fashion education here comes in. That's where, like, then it's like the design. What choices are you making with factories and stuff there? Are you thinking about those things before you make clothes? Are those things important to you? But then also, like, when you're making the clothes from the fabric or your yarn, are you thinking about using the fabric or the yarn in a way that it's not wasteful? So like, if you have a big sheet of fabric and you want to make a shirt, and you put your paper pattern down here and cut out a sleeve there, and then you like cut out another bit in the middle, what about all that waste that you're creating that you can no longer use? Like, are you even factoring that into how you're making clothes? And then also, are you making them for someone who's going to be able to wear them and buy them? Or how long are they going to last? What are they going to do after that one life cycle? Is there anything that can be done? Are you making them where they can go and biodegrade and come back into the earth kind of and give back those nutrients? Or like a lot of things in a lot of places, it's just like the overproduction of clothing to the point where it's just in landfills.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a massive industry, so it's like ethical and sustainable. It's like, where, what part, like it's really hard, it's really difficult.
Kind of an interesting difference there. I've definitely found with a lot of manufacturing industries that waste is kind of so costly for them that it's sometimes nearly not intentional. It's sometimes more cost effective for them to minimize waste as much as possible.
Yeah.
So they do definitely cut things down to a certain extent, but that's completely profit driven. So there's a case that the materials are just so cheap that companies can pump this stuff out however they want without properly thinking about it.
I'd say, what you're saying there makes like total sense, and I think that's probably like a thing that thinkers or like writers in the fashion industry have only like put that question to people recently, and it's like, oh wait, can we make money from this? But like in terms of like fast fashion or high street, a lot of them use acrylic yarns or like man-made fibers and man-made fabrics, and a lot of that is cheaper and easier to produce because a lot of it's made from plastic. But then again, it's like, that's not good for the environment, but because it's so cheap and people are like in that kind of capitalist idea of consuming where like they always want more and more and more, it's like they're just going to keep making more because that's what the people want.
Yeah, I mean, and they just want to make money.
Yeah, they just want to make money.
Yeah.
But like if you walk into like Pennies or something like that, and like if you think about all those things I was just talking about, how it gets from like a fibre to a product in front of you, how can you look at something for €3 and be like, God, that's great value for money?
Yeah.
Like how like how many people have had to touch that before it's even got into Pennies? Like, never mind the people who had to grow or make the fabric and then to put it together and all of that. It's like €3. Like, you can get a coffee and like Hook and Ladder for $3.60.
Yeah,
like,
so you do have to ask and they're obviously making money.
Yeah.
So how can they make the money off the back of something that they can sell for so cheap, that's also travelled the length of the world as well before it even enters our hands? I suppose probably the biggest roadblock that a lot of people would say in terms of buying something, a piece of clothing that is more sustainable, would be the cost.
Definitely.
Is it possible to have affordable, sustainable clothing, or is it a case of you're just looking at it, it's just going to last way longer, so it's kind of going to earn itself back over time?
I think there's like, that's just something that we have to tackle, because sustainability can't be an elitist concept. It can't just be for the people who can afford it, because I didn't grow up from a rich family and I understand why we got stuff from Pennies, because like that's what you could afford, and like that's I get that, and it's not fair to like say that people should just stop like buying there. But it has to be that like we change the way we look at clothes. Like, we can't just decide that we're going to buy new stuff every week, because if you added up the stuff that you like spent in Pennies in the past 2 months, but if you had decided to buy like one really good shirt made from linen for like maybe half the price probably of what you spent in Pennies in 2 months, like, it's just looking at it instead of like quantity by quality.
Yeah.
And look, even like things like, I buy a lot of my clothes in charity shops or vintage stores, or like kilo sales online, or Depop, or like clothes swaps. There's like a lot more stuff going on now where like you don't have to be buying expensive to live sustainably and ethically. Like the most sustainable clothes are the clothes you already own anyway. So it's like extending their life by like swapping or sharing, or like even getting them made into something new that you really like even some of Jared's band t-shirts, like holes everywhere, like going to gigs, like ripped everything. I was like, I can't even look at these anymore. But he got like a new denim jacket, so I like got his replacements t-shirt and made it into like a big patch on the back and stuck it on, and that way it gives it a new lease of life, and it continue for a bit more. And the rest are like the kitchen rags for cleaning your dishes.
Yeah.
So
You mentioned bands there. One question that I really wanted to ask you, because obviously a lot of the listeners will be somewhat involved usually in music.
Yeah.
Obviously, no one gives a shite about my band, but let's say bigger.
I mean, everyone loves your band. Really.
But let's
I was
say
paid to say that sponsored ad.
well, bigger bands do sell
Yeah.
a fucking load of t-shirts. And personally, never really considered the impact that we might be having. Like, can we be doing things better in terms of the t-shirts that we sell? Is there stuff that bands can be doing to make their products more environmentally friendly?
You should ask Jer, because I'm always annoying his head with this all the time.
That's Jer from Cruiser, by the way.
Yeah. No, like, even just like looking at where the t-shirts are sourced before you buy them, like, or are they 100% cotton, or
Gildan. They're always Gildan.
I know they're always Gildan.
Are they alright, or are they
from
shite?
Fruit of the Loom. They're well made. They're good t-shirts. They last a long time, which is good. But I can't really figure out where they source their cotton from, which is always a bit of a problem.
Okay, it's not a good sign.
No, but I actually found a t-shirt company in Galway called Prairie T-shirts, and they sell organic cotton t-shirts, because I was looking at putting some of my own illustrations on t-shirts. Because I actually designed the Cruiser t-shirt as well.
Speaking about selling t-shirts.
Yeah.
There you go, sponsored ad.
Yeah, that's it. But even like that, I was a bit like, oh, now that's like going on something that I'm like, don't know if I agree with that. Or like, even like, where do you get them printed? Do you get them printed in Ireland? Do you get them printed locally? What kind of ink? Do you use organic ink? But also that drives up the cost and the expense. So I get why it's a hard thing for bands to do as well.
Yeah, well, I suppose we should be doing our bit, but again, I suppose it's a case of being aware of it, because definitely up until very recently, that's not something I ever considered as like whoever can do it for the cheapest, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
And within the quickest time frame.
Yeah.
But I do know there's a good few people out there that definitely use organic inks, And I can definitely imagine that just inks are chemicals at the end of the day. Like there's a lot of waste that comes and a lot of runoff that comes from screen printing as well. I know that's
definitely
totally different kettle of fish to what we're talking about anyway, but in relation to...
But you know, if you think like your skin is your biggest organ, so like if you keep the t-shirts at least at 100% cotton and aftercare as well, so wash them 30 degrees, that's already going to like bring down so much, like that'll keep your t-shirt for longer. 100% cotton won't be putting microfibers back into the ocean when you wash it, and also it's just better for your skin to be wearing something more natural. So if you have those three things, I mean, you're doing pretty well.
It'll help things a little bit. Do you think the government could be doing more in relation to policy then? Because we're obviously in Ireland, we're in the EU, and I mean the EU is kind of strict on life cycle analysis for a lot of products, like especially, you know, cars, electronics. But to my knowledge, there's nothing like that in relation to clothes. So do you think policymakers could be doing more in the fashion industry?
Oh, 100%. I don't think they want to, because like it's like tackling capitalism. Like I think looking at the fashion industry, it's like very clear that if it is to change, it can't be a capitalist system. So like for them to tackle that, it's almost like they have to be like, we're going to progress to something else. Like it has to be like circular economy, or we have to be, but then that kind of changes how you change every other system. And I find it funny sometimes, like fashion is so just ingrained as like taken for granted kind of system that people don't even think to question it or change it. And like government policy, there should even be like more recycling bins around. Like where can we take our clothes to be recycled, instead of like the recycling bin that brings it back to the third world country where it was actually made.
Yeah, for their own profit more often than not as well.
Exactly. But like what about like, why can't we actually recycle clothes like we recycle plastic and glass? Like surely we can be able to like break down those fibers and use them again and again and again. There are people like doing that with yarns, but like not in Ireland, and like we definitely have a lot of clothing waste. For sure. I mean, if you look at like the UK statistic, which probably people will be like, oh, UK statistic, but you know, border hopping. So, but it's something like every year, each person in the UK throws away, I think it's like 100 kilos of clothing a year, something like that. Really? I need to double check that. But yeah, there's like, if you go on Fashion Revolution Week, they have, or even on their Instagram, they have like all of these statistics.
Yeah.
And they do the UK, they do America, they do all around the world. But like, I imagine we would be pretty similar to the UK.
Yeah. You mentioned Fashion Revolution there and Fashion Revolution Week. So would you mind explaining what it is? And you've organised a few events under the banner of it as well.
Yeah, in Limerick. Fashion Revolution Week started in 2013 after the Rana Plaza factory collapse. And the Rana Plaza factory collapse was a garment factory collapse and killed over 1,500 workers. And there was really no compensation or anything done. And there was also, before the factory had collapsed, workers complaining about their conditions and their rights, and that the building had cracks in it, and there was nothing done by it. But it was really got global attention because a lot of brands actually used the factory and didn't care, like Penny's, H&M. There was bigger brands as well, like that weren't just on the high street. And it kind of just sparked this, like with people who have worked in the industry for a long time, they were like, this can't continue, and they started Fashion Revolution Week, which is the anniversary of the Rana Plaza collapse every year in April. And it's just kind of a week to like kind of be more conscious of what we're doing as an industry, and also to get people involved and create a community and get people to look at their clothes differently. There's more and more events on every year, and there's always, you know, Dublin is always a bit of the centre of it in Ireland, but there's one done in Cork, Galway and Limerick for the past 2 years. And just small things, just getting people, the main thing is that you look at the label on your clothes and like take a picture of it or the brand and like put it on Instagram and like tag the brand and be like, hashtag who made my clothes. Because the more consumers who are asking high street stores and brands, they have to tell you, and they have to be more conscious and aware of what they're doing, and that you can't just keep profiting off people's lives, because that is how they're making their money at the minute. And
then I suppose moving on to where you're at right now, you're currently in the process of setting up your own business.
Yes.
Which is so exciting.
Yeah.
So I suppose you want to tell us what it is and kind of what you'll be focusing on.
I must say, before I like properly start that, like seeing what you guys are doing with the DIY music scene here has been like such an inspiration for me, and just going and doing my own thing.
Ah, Jesus.
No, definitely. Like, I very much like, because I've been going to the gigs and stuff since it started, and it's the community, and like, it's just so wholesome. You can see when you get people together that really care about something, and it's just like, it just grows and grows and grows. And it's like, I love going to the gigs because every time it's just a weird time, and it's super just great, and everyone's always really lovely. But then you also get like really good music, and like everyone's just like there wanting to do better. And it's like, that is kind of like, I'm like, I want to create what you have, but like for fashion. And like, people always like, oh, you're still in Ireland doing fashion, and it's a bit like, why do you have to leave to become a success? Like, there's very much that
That's
mentality.
a very Irish thing.
Yeah, it's like, oh, but like, it's like, oh, they went to London and came back, so that makes them successful.
I've never understood that there has to be this credibility of you have to go away, and once you have a little bit of success abroad, and it's like, okay, we'll welcome you with open arms now. That applies to every industry. Yeah, that's always blown my mind.
But I'm like, when can we like start forming our own opinions about what is good and what is bad, and stop needing other people to tell you what is good or what is bad? Because then frankly, isn't our journalism just frankly bad? But like, seeing what you did, where it's like, you build each other up, so it doesn't matter what other people say, because you all know that you're good. You keep putting each other on for bands and gigs, so you're existing outside of all of that, which I think that's what really inspired me about it.
Well, thank you.
But yeah, starting up my own company, kind of talking about everything that we have been talking about. I'm kind of want to use the waste as my raw materials. So the factory that I worked on Inishmaan, they've kindly agreed that when like, I will be using their waste as my raw materials, and it's like sourcing valuable waste as well. So I know that they use good yarns, and I know that they are already ethically sourced, and I know from working there that they don't produce a lot of waste, but like, it's like every industry, every product. If there's something on the knitting machine and it's like a bit of elastic went in here, there's a hole in it, or it's ripped, or it's just, you can't be fixed, before it's even made into a garment, it goes into a bag for waste. And they do let the interns there use it and stuff, but there's a lot, like it's probably about 6 or 7 bags of waste a week. But when you look at the massive scale of the industry, it doesn't seem like a lot. And theirs is definitely probably one of the lowest that you'll ever see. But if you think if everyone is doing that already.
Yeah, and I mean, if you can make use of what a smaller company is doing, and really puts in perspective what could possibly be done if bigger companies were actually making an effort.
Definitely. So like, I'm going to try and get in touch. There's a few other factories in Ireland, like Fishermen out of Ireland, and there's Donegal yarns as well in Donegal. But I know that they use good yarns and that they're all sourced well. So I'm again not making stuff with microfibers or plastics, even though I'm using waste. But then the idea is to like bring it all back, so I'll be just filled with loads of yarn, and I'll have to like respin it back onto cones, and then I'll be creating garments out of that. And then that'll be like tier 1, so that's kind of like remake, so taking the waste, putting the value back into it again, and making a product. But then I also want to develop like a limited edition range using fibers, local fibers that are biodegradable. So again, there's Donegal yarns, but I would be getting it undyed and using natural dyes myself, so that it can be a fully biodegradable product. Like, it's not going to biodegrade while you're wearing it, but like you can put it in the compost heap and it will like actually go back to the earth. And then there's like alpaca spinners now too in Northern Ireland, which I don't know enough about yet, but I'll probably go and visit them and see if it's possible. But I think like, if you're making slow fashion and making good decisions, like a lot of people are like, oh, it's too hard to change everything about your process and your system. But it's hard when you're doing fast fashion and that's not your priority. But like, if you build it slowly and take your time, all of it can actually feed into how you sell and use your product, and it creates a story also for the people who are buying it. Like, they can actually buy a product that is affordable, and they don't have to have a bad moral conscience about it either.
Yeah, and having the story behind something is important, especially when obviously, aside from all the good reasons that you mentioned, it's definitely, you know, a valuable marketing tool as well.
Oh yeah,
which you can hopefully use to your advantage.
Yeah. Well, that's what I love about knitwear as well. It's like, it's not like writing a song, but like, you have control over like everything. It's like, you can pick the fiber, you can pick the color, you can pick the yarn, the thread. It starts with a thread, and like you put together the stitches. And a lot of Irish knitwear and Aran is about telling stories, and that's where the stitches came from. And they all have like there's ones like look like a zigzag, and it's called like marriage lines, and it's how people move through life together. But also it's like this really forward thinking thing about marriage, which I'm like, when did we forget about that in Ireland? Like it's like two parallel lines that move through together, but they never like, it's like you're still two people, but you're just moving through life together. And it's like knitwear has such power in it like that to tell stories, and that's why I love it.
And you mentioned that Inishman, they sell most of their products abroad. Is that kind of true for most of the knitwear industry in Ireland?
No.
Okay.
No. Basically, a lot of the other factories are more like tourism industry. So they'd be kind of cashing in like all of the tourists coming.
Shite.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, some of them, they still make really good product, but they're not selling to the same people. But a lot of it is like the Aran sweater market. They can come and fight me if they want, but I just can't agree with what they're doing like at all. Like, I know some of their stuff is made in Ireland, but not a lot of it is.
Okay, interesting.
And they get away with it very cleverly because they have this certificate of authenticity. Mm-hmm. But it just talks about the stitches being authentic Aran stitches. Doesn't say where it's made or where it comes from or where the yarn comes from.
Yeah.
So it's very clever, and it's like, this is an authentic Aran, but it's not an Aran from Ireland.
Yeah. Do you think it's possible to break into that market as a smaller Irish company that is?
I don't think their market is my market.
Okay.
So I'm not really worried about them.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll probably, like, my focus is like that change making consumer, like the person who is fed up with everything, and like looking at how fashion revolution has progressed from a small movement to a global movement. You can see that market is like starting to exist, and people are stopping to think and look at it more. And I think even how you present the clothes, like I'll be selling online and in local stores, and then also doing like an exhibition for like the limited edition collections. So it'll be like you're going to an art exhibition, and those will be the pieces there, and like it'll be, that's it. Like once that is made, it's never made again. So it's like looking at like the value and the story that we have and the heritage that we have of knitwear in a different way.
Yeah, I can definitely draw parallels what you're saying about a one of one kind of a limited edition thing, and that is definitely, a lot of people have been using that kind of mindset to sell art. And even in music, like you do hear certain artists that will release an EP and only do 1,000 copies, but sell them at like €100 each kind of thing, and would actually make more money doing it that way than
you create demand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I suppose it is kind of creating a demand behind something and making it, I don't like using the word exclusive, is like,
no,
it is like underselling it and seeming like shady millennial shite, but I think you know what I mean.
But I think in a world that's like over consumed and mass produced, it's like people are like, what? Wait, there's an end to it? Like,
yeah, everything is so homogenized that this is like the polar opposite, so then this seems just great, basically. Yeah,
which is like really bizarre, but yeah. It's like, that's how a printmaker makes an edition of, that's where I got it from, my year in print. I was like, like, wouldn't it be great if you could transfer that mindset to fashion? Like an edition, you get an edition of like 1 of 100 prints, and like that's it. So like you could have an edition of like the same jumper, but there's only like 25 of them in like a few sizes or whatever.
And do companies do that much?
Not bigger companies. There's definitely like people involved in slow fashion around the world that are getting into that and like creating their own. But again, they do a lot more of like made to order.
That seems mad to me, because I know one of these cases of like going down a rabbit hole on the internet sometimes. But a lot of people are really, really crazy into collecting whatever you call them, runners, tackies, sneakers. Like Nike will do fucking whatever, 20 copies of Yeezys or whatever, and the world goes fucking crazy for them and will pay whatever amount.
Culture is insane.
Yeah. I think if you can apply that same kind of mentality to a different industry, then you could be. I mean,
there's so many industries that are just like ripe for disruption now because of like I feel like capitalism has got to a point and it's just like people are so oversaturated. So like a slight change in perspective, it's like, oh my God, what is this? I'm not being told what to do. I can make a decision. I can like have something that no one else is going to have.
How do you feel about, let's say, brands like Nike? I'm so ill-informed on the subject, I can't even give you an example, but I know it does happen that they'll get like a really hyped up on-trend designer and they'll get them to design a particular run of shoes for Nike. Do you think that is cool or kind of doing the opposite of what they should be doing, if you know what I mean?
I think, yeah, that's always a bit of a weird one. Like sometimes those collaborations can be amazing and great, but when they're going more for like, if they pick a person for like a trend than a name, and I mean it's just creating more, it's adding to the problem really, because then they're creating like with the same process. I mean that person probably isn't really doing that much and it could have been given to someone with a lot more skills, but then they wouldn't have that marketing tool to sell it. Like, but there's like if you are making small additions and stuff like that, why don't you try and change your process for that small addition rather than get a celebrity to put their name to something you probably already designed? Like why don't you try and make a collection with like, eco cotton shoes? Why can't that be your selling point? Like
do you think being based in Ireland, we spoke about it very briefly there, but do you think being based in Ireland will be a positive or a negative? It's just that is kind of something that does interest me, because I definitely find with music that in certain ways it really is a negative thing because it's so fucking expensive for us to get abroad.
Yeah.
But at the same time, any of the cool stuff we've gotten to do has been off the back of being Irish or the connections that we've made through people that have taken an interest in Ireland. So will it be a positive or a negative or a both?
I think it'll be a bit of both. I do think it's that thing like we have to try and find value in ourselves again, and it's definitely something I got from the factory, is that like you can use that to your advantage. And like a lot of people even say to me like, oh, why aren't you going to Donegal? Like the name of being made in Donegal is like, but for me Ireland is enough. I much prefer being in Limerick. There's more facilities for me personally, but like Donegal also kind of feeds into that paddywhackery thing that I want to get away from. But I think what is different about us will stand to us. And it's like my friend Jack O'Flynn, who does the Humans of the Sesh, it was him that told me that one night. We were like having a pint and I was like, you don't need to go anywhere. It might be harder here, especially like there's definitely not a lot of like support, I think, if you were gonna try and open a shop or a studio, or like if like the tax and the rates and stuff like that, they can be so much easier in other countries.
I know, yeah, it's crazy.
Like, but then you have a global audience that you can sell to online. Like the internet has made the world a lot more global and a lot more accessible, so I think in that way you can do what you want in Ireland and try and like maybe change it here and also sell to the world, hopefully. I don't know.
Yeah. That's the
Buy my
hope.
stuff.
Yeah. Well, I suppose just to finish up then, obviously this has been really interesting because you're currently in the process of setting all this up. So is there anywhere that people, I suppose, can currently look out for online or in the future can check out to keep an eye on how things grow?
I think at the minute probably my own Instagram, which is just Ash McCallion, which I don't know if that's a real common name. So
probably not. You may as well spell it.
Yeah, McCallion. Good Ulster name.
Beautiful Ulster name.
Yeah. And I'll be setting up my company Instagram and stuff, but that'll be after I have products and stuff for you to sell. So yeah, check it out.
Unreal. And obviously thanks so much for talking to me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for educating me, because I definitely with this whole thing want to learn a lot more, and this is something that I definitely don't know much about and definitely want to learn a lot more about. So
but I think people, you know more than you know, and like your wardrobe was in the fashion supply chain, so if you just start there. Yeah,
it's a case of just everyone just kind of opening up their own minds, being a little bit more aware, and that applies to kind of everything in life, really. Yeah. I suppose that's probably the best note to end things on. So Aisling McCallion from County Donegal. Thanks, Ash.
Thanks, Marty.
sat at a table, the plate is burning through. This meal is painful, there's always an excuse. The ground's not stable, never fit for two. The wall's unfaithful from years of neglect and abuse. My blood is so thin, it's bursting out of my skin. My blood is so thin, it's bursting out of my skin. My blood is so thin, it's bursting out of my skin. My blood is so thin. I still feel shameful, a cloud covers the roof. My mind's unable to process or compute. We'll sit in silence as I struggle to chew. Tough as a tyrant, slave to whatever we choose. My blood is so thin, it's bursting out of my skin. My blood is so thin, bursting out of my skin. My blood is so thin, it's bursting out of my skin. My blood is so thin. My blood is so thin, it's bursting